Want to know what your dog is thinking?
Have a challenging dog behavior you need help with?
The Dish on Dogs is your source for all your canine questions.
Improve your relationship with your dog and deepen your understanding of your furry friend. Right here on the Dish on Dogs. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dish on Dogs. I'm your host, Mike Gould, affectionately known as the mayor of Houndstown, USA, home to the happiest dogs on earth. Houndstown, USA is an interactive, fully interactive doggy daycare where we put packs of dogs together to let them live their best life. As always, the very lovely Jackie Bondanza is joining me today. She is, of course, the president of Houndstown, and she can explain. Welcome to the show again, Jackie. Explain to everybody what the hell you do and what is Houndstown all about.
Well, my role, I see, is in kind of just wrangling you. That's my number one responsibility, making sure you don't say or do anything that's, too out of line. But No, I'm kidding. But so Houndstown is a fully interactive pet care facility. We have 11 locations open and operating in 4 different states. We're going to be opening another 7 to 10 this year in Philadelphia and Orlando, Florida, Palm Coast, Las Vegas. So we're really getting out there, which is great for all the dogs in our community and all the people who need reliable and trustworthy pet care.
Right.
So the topic of today's show is how to be a leader of the pack. So I think as humans, we often struggle with understanding our dogs. And of course, that's what we do at Houndstown is we try to provide an environment for our dog to be a dog. And part of our responsibility in doing that is helping to bridge the knowledge gap between humans and their animals, right? So helping them understand how to foster better relationships with their dogs.
Right.
So, and we often, get questions from our customers and training inquiries on how they can make this happen, how they can address behavioral issues in their dogs. And the answer almost always is you need to become a leader of the dog. Right. So we're going to break this down into 5 fairly simple things that you can take away.
Okay.
So the first one is... go ahead.
Right, thank you. So the operative word is simple. You said we're going to break it down to 5 simple things. The theme that runs through all of these episodes is the human brain versus the mammalian brain. And I hate to be repetitive, but it's such an important, critical concept for people to understand that we all have a mammal brain, which is our kind of fight or flight, very simple primal predator brain. We hunt to eat, we shelter, we do very primal things, and we still do it. However, we have become, because our human brain has mushroomed so fast and rapidly, our human brain, our neocortex, new brain, has evolved so quickly, it really has been an impediment to us to understand the simplicity of animals as we were and are, thousands of years ago. So when we keep it simple, the biggest trick is to be able to detach your human brain, your neocortex that does all that sophisticated thinking that makes us be functional as humans, to be able to drive your car, to be able to go to school. Everything we do as humans, or most things we all do as humans, is with our neocortex, our new brain. The only time we engage our mammalian brain now is when there's something happening. If we're hungry, we eat. Instead of hunting and killing food, we go to a grocery store now. But our primal mammalian brain is always there. It's just not as engaged anymore. Right. So what we have to do is go back and think of the simplicity of dogs. And as you say, leadership is something we all know. Every one of us who's been who works for an employer, who's gone to school, has flown on a plane, and the flight attendant is the leader of the pack. The flight attendant is the leader of the pack. So it's really simple. So the best way to understand it, in my mind, is just human analogies. And it's not complicated. So humans, most of our clients, very loving people, but they're so damn smart, they gravitate towards an intellectual explanation or an academic explanation for dog behavior.
Right. I think it's hard for people to conceptualize what it means to be a leader of a pack of animals. So we're essentially trying to replicate or recreate what a mother dog would be to her pack. And that requires a little bit of deconstruction, right? Taking off our human brain and putting on our dog brain to understand what does leadership look like from a dog's perspective. Because it is, the philosophies are similar in humans, but it's a different, it's practicality to it.
So dogs and humans, particularly, so you have to separate, when we talk about humans, think of young children. So if you think of a kindergarten classroom, just a kindergarten, or a nursery school, think of a nursery school, anything that you take a group of children, and what you're doing is you're being the leader of the child. So a classroom full of kindergarten children, they come in, they sit at a designated spot. They don't sit wherever they want. They can't jump out the window just because they see the ice cream man. So, we know that. So a kindergarten teacher, if they're good, is a leader of primal animals, because that's what your damn kids are. They're these little animals with their mammalian brain, or their executive brain hasn't fully developed. We know human brain, right?
Right. Well, they have some form of a human brain that's
they
there
do, but it hasn't
developing.
evolved. It's their mammalian.
It hasn't evolved yet, but I think there's a way for a teacher in a kindergarten class to communicate with students, because it's more natural, right?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
So if a kindergarten teacher's been doing this for 25 years, they know the routine.
Right.
It's easy to communicate human to human. It's more challenging for humans to communicate human to dog.
All right. I hear what you're saying. I understand. But so let's think of it this way. So mammals, pack animals, they need leadership, structure, and consistency. So you as a human needs leadership, structure, and consistency. So no matter what you do in life, and as independent as you think you are, there is leadership, consistency, and structure. So when you're speeding down the LIE or a highway, there's structure in that, and there's consistency to that. If you break a law, you get corrected. You get corrected by a police officer that may give you a summons.
Right. So there are these like innate laws of nature,
exactly,
and laws of our world that we're always conscious of.
Right, we're always conscious of, but when it comes to our dog, we overthink it. So we're talking to our dog. So just with that simple thing, dogs need structure. So what does that mean? Structure it just means it needs boundaries. It has to have clear boundaries. So when you bring a dog home at 3 or 4 months old and you allow it to go on the couch because it's so cute and cuddly, in 6 months when it's a year old or so, it's automatically going to gravitate towards the couch. And at that point, when the dog weighs 100 pounds, you might be screaming and yelling at it because it assumes it's allowed on the couch.
Right. And if you don't set good boundaries and structure from day one, the dog, then you don't have the authority to affect that leadership in your house.
Right.
So if the dog doesn't come in and understands that you are the leader in a loving and caring way, of course, that they will not, the behaviors can snowball and turn into in some cases serious issues, behavioral issues of aggression and territorial issues in the home.
Right. Most of the time it's benign behavior, but it can be dangerous. So if you have a puppy that at 3 or 4 months old is used to jumping on people for their attention, their affection, and it could be the nicest dog in the world, but when he's a year old and he weighs 80 pounds and he jumps on a child or grandma and he knocks them through a storm door off of a patio, it's as dangerous as if they bit.
Turns into a dangerous behavior.
However, if the dog was never allowed to jump on anybody, and when I say not allowed, you just don't promote that behavior. It's unnatural for dogs to jump. So in the wild, you don't see dogs jumping up in the air. They're not kangaroos. So it's an unnatural act for a dog to jump.
And I think, wouldn't you agree it's a sign of anxiety in a dog? Jumping is an anxiety in a dog because they're trying to get something from you.
Right. Well, specifically, they're trying to get your thumbs. So they don't have thumbs, and our world is built 5 to 6 feet off the ground, right? Your doorknobs, your windows, everything is designed for humans. Nothing is designed for dogs. So when dogs, obviously, they watch everything you do. That's their job. So your pet at home, their sole 24-hour-a-day job is to watch your movements. And every movement you make means something to a dog.
Right.
So if you get out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to the bathroom, That's different for you to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to work because your ritual is different.
And
So-
dogs pay attention to our rituals and our
goodness.
routines, and they're kind of forced to interpret what they mean, right?
Right.
So this
Well-
is what triggers some separation anxiety in dogs because, you're blow drying your hair, you're picking up your keys, you're putting your shoes on, and you're triggering the dog because the dog is in this routine and they know that means you're leaving.
Right. Those are all cues that develop a dog's brain, and they're not even that profound. We think of those as that way, but it could be the squeak of a bed or the squeak of a floor that's part of your ritual. Like you said, maybe just touching the dryer or the hair dryer. Obviously, we all know when you pick up the dog's leash, most dogs go ballistic because it symbolizes
Right, they've
something to them.
connected those
They connected
dots
that
quickly.
cue.
Yeah.
Right. However, if you pick up a rope, they don't respond that way.
Right.
So everything we do, a dog's life 24/7 is studying your behavior and understand something, and movement most importantly. Dogs in the wild, they survive by watching the leader of the pack move. They don't have discussions. The mother or father, the alpha dog, doesn't give a plan of the day to a dog. So the dog's sole requirement in life is to watch the leader of the pack. And depending on how good of a leader it is, if you're a good leader, meaning you're consistent, you're loving, and you provide structure, the dog will be much more relaxed. So, right, jumping, barking, those are all signs of anxiety. So a dog barking is anxiety. It doesn't mean it's negative, but it means anxiety. It's barking for a reason. Dogs in the wild, wolves don't bark because barking is actually an immature behavior of a wolf. So all these behaviors we take for granted or we rationalize.
Right.
That's our biggest problem. It's just like me rationalizing the behavior of my children, like, oh, it's just a teenager. Oh, it's this or that. These behaviors are inappropriate. Jumping on a human is inappropriate because it can obviously lead to accidents down the road. Again,
Right. And then I think the dog learns to engage you or engage whomever they're jumping on. And if it's you and you're supposed to be the leader and you're not correcting the dog for jumping, the dog will then assume that that's an okay, accepted behavior.
Right.
So way number one is to set boundaries and structure in your home. What does that look like? Don't allow a dog on a couch unless invited. And this does not mean that a dog can never be on a couch or a bed. Right. In my home, my dog is allowed on the couch and the bed. The difference is I invite him. And when I ask him to get off, he has to listen to me. Right. Just very similar to children.
And when we say listen, I like to say defer to your authority.
Right.
So I like to put words in place that make sense to dogs. So it's because a lot of times people misunderstand. So when I say to correct a dog or set structure and boundary, it has nothing to do with yelling, talking, nothing tertiary. Right. Meaning the dog just responds to you because that's the natural way to do it. We do it. We are creatures of habit. So your house could go on fire and you would look for your pants before you ran out the front door because we've been putting our pants on since we were young children.
Some of us,
right. I have been known to do nude unicycle riding, right? You're aware of that. And that's one of my favorite sports.
Oh, gosh.
But the point of the matter is we are creatures of habit. You get up in the morning, you're programmed. You don't even think about it. You don't have to think about how to tie your shoe. You know how to do it. When things change, I'll give you a perfect example. When your ritual changes, it's completely unbalancing for us. So let's say you are used to driving your car here in the United States, right? We don't even think about it. You get in the car, you can do it when you're half asleep. However, if you just go to London and the steering wheel's on the right-hand side, you're completely discombobulated because your ritual it's the same thing. It's just that the steering wheel's on the right instead of the left. If you go where you sleep at night, what side of the bed you sleep on, that's your ritual. If you had to sleep somewhere on the other side, it might not work for you. The same for everything, where you sit at the dining room table.
Right, but how does this relate to dogs?
Because dogs are creatures of habit like we are.
Right.
So as soon as the ritual is broken, the dog can very easily get out of balance. Does that make sense? Probably not.
Are we talking about the importance of establishing rituals so that dogs understand the ritual, right?
Consistency. Right.
So part of that also means not setting the dog up to expect things. And right? So the way this comes in a lot is when feeding time. So we as humans, and you talk about this a lot, we eat 3, 4, or 5 times a day. We think dogs need to eat at the same time 2 to sometimes 3 times a day.
Right.
That's unnatural for
Right.
a dog. A dog
Of
in the
course.
wild would eat maybe once a day or once every other day.
Or once a week, depending on what's
I
available.
mean, and that we're not suggesting that that's what you should do, but
well, wouldn't,
when you get into a routine where dogs expect to be fed at certain cues
Right.
and triggers
Right.
at points in the day, that can be a hindrance to your leadership.
well, the question is the old saying: is the dog wagging the tail, or is
Right.
the tail wagging the dog? If the dog is jumping, you said it. All he wants is your thumbs. And when a dog jumps on somebody, even if a dog comes near you, most humans' reaction is to reach down and touch them. So a dog learns very quickly when they violate your personal space.
They get
they get
rewarded.
rewarded for
Yeah.
that. So by establishing space. So what we talk about, something so simple, and we'll talk about it, and I know in the book we're writing, we talk about simple exercises. The next time you go home, try not to look, talk, or touch your dog. That sounds, and I would say it's so easy that most people can't do it. And I'm saying for 10 minutes, the next time you come home, instead of petting your dog on the head or whatever it is, letting him out to urinate, whatever you're doing, just defer that for 10 minutes.
And I
Don't
think
make eye
that's
contact.
really an important thing to do if you're dealing with a dog with separation anxiety, is not creating that overstimulation and engagement.
Right.
Whenever the dog initiates that, and when you're coming and going. So you don't want to create these routines where the dog is getting heightened at these certain trigger points during the day.
Right.
So setting boundaries and structure and making sure the dog understands that they're not entitled to get up on a couch or a bed.
And get them used to your separation anxiety. It's a psychological thing that's created always by humans, because it is unnatural, as you said, for a dog to be alone because they're pack animals. But you can easily do it when you don't put. What happens is dogs suck our emotion out of us. So they literally, it doesn't happen with any other member of your family. It doesn't happen with friends. Dogs just look at you. And we have a tendency of talking to them, touching them.
We over-engage with them.
Right. So they suck the life out of us emotionally and many times physically. We're always thinking, is he hungry? Why is he barking? Why is he crying? Does he need food? And we make these assumptions and you give them food. And we can go into 1,000 examples of how dogs make connections, of how they manipulate humans. They're manipulative, just like 2-year-old children.
I think they have to be manipulative to kind of survive and understand their place in the pack, right?
Right. It's nature. It's not, again, dogs and children are manipulative. 2-year-old children are narcissists. Dogs are narcissists. They couldn't give a shit about you. They don't care how you pay for the food, how you interfered with your life to get home to feed them. So they're narcissists by nature. That doesn't make them bad. They don't have an executive brain to have all these other things. So my 2-year-old granddaughter is a narcissist. And she wants what she wants when she wants it. There's no...
Right. And it's up to the parent to say,
Set the
this
structure.
is not an appropriate time to give that to you.
Right, which my daughter doesn't.
And we have to...
Right.
Right. That's a whole other topic.
Right.
But we as pet owners have to understand how to communicate that to the dog. And so that the dog... it lives kind of a more balanced life in the home, and they're not constantly in this state of expectation and unbalance. So way number 2 to become
Only up to 2.
to
Jesus
5
Christ.
ways to become a leader of the pack
God.
is to use the crate. So talk about the importance of the crate very briefly
Very
and
briefly.
generally.
So dogs are denning animals. That's not my idea. That's Mother Nature's idea. What does that mean? They go to the tiniest, smallest, secure place they can find. In the wild, that would be under some rocks. They very rarely lie in the open, exposed to danger. So they're denning, meaning if you look at dogs in Alaska, they get into tiny, tiny little snow. They dig holes. When you see your dog digging outside, they're digging to den somewhere. So a crate is analogous to a den. So that's all the dog needs. And the crate provides the same security as a den would out in the wild. People think of a crate as a cage, and the truth of the matter is dogs don't even see through. They don't see it from their perspective.
Right. They don't understand that they're behind
Bars, right?
Just
They
how
see
it
through the
looks.
bars.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a funny phenomena that their eyes, the way, without getting into how their monochromatic vision and how they see and depth perception, they don't even know they're in a crate. So when it's done correctly, when they're meals, so it's hugely important for them psychologically to be in a small space and not free roaming.
Right, and I think it gives them the security to know that they're in their own space where no one else is going to come in. Just like you always use the analogy of a bedroom for a human.
Right.
You know?
We're denning also. We want to get into small spaces, get under the covers, turn out the lights, make sure the doors are locked, and we rest comfortably. And that is, again, primal. When dogs were puppies, and don't forget, domestic dogs are almost eternal puppies, the mother would take the dogs, leave them in the den, into their den, and go out and hunt and bring the food back and regurgitate it in their mouth. And that's a story for another behavior. But the point is, this is nature's way. It's not about locking a dog in a cage.
Right.
Now, obviously, if you leave a dog in a crate too long, that's your problem. That's, so you have to be reasonable. You have to be balanced, just like your child. Your children need to go to bed at 10 o'clock. They should go to bed at 10 o'clock, but you wouldn't put them to bed at 10 o'clock and then tickle them and then yell at them for not going to sleep. So this is what we're doing with dogs constantly.
Right, we're sending
conflicting messages constantly.
So when done correctly, and what we mean by that is in our world, we use food, the dog's meals, either broken up throughout the day, randomly and intermittently throughout the day, and we tell the dog to go place into their crate, and so the only place the dog gets food is in his crate, his or her crate.
In a den. So let's use the word den.
Yeah.
In replacement of crate. Crate sounds creepy to me. They look creepy, but not to a dog. So does a nest, do we feel bad for birds in a nest in the trees in the middle of February? Of course not. We watch seagulls, they nest. Right. So this is all, again, anthropomorphic thought.
And I think if you don't provide a den or in a safe space for a dog, they will find their own. So like I go to people's houses and the dog is there if there's a party or a dinner or something, and the dog dens underneath, the kitchen table or in a corner somewhere. Right. So they're looking for their own safe space.
Of course. They create it because they're denning. So think of your dog at home. Very rarely will they sprawl out in the middle of the floor. They'll den on a couch. So they want their sides covered. So at least if they're in a corner, they corner themselves because that's one less perspective that they can get or in danger. Right. So they can see what's coming. So whether that's on a couch, like you said, under a coffee table, in the corner, they den. And as you said, if you don't provide the den, they find a place to den. But with the crate, for human sake, you can secure the dog in the crate. So if they're so used to being there, if you have children over or something happening in your world that you want the dog in a secure place, but it's not viewed, it should never be used as punishment.
No, I think that's the difference.
Right.
A lot of people have this notion that it should be used as a punishment.
Yes.
And we use it as the exact opposite. So number 2 to being a good leader is providing a safe place, providing a den.
Right.
Number 3 is not allowing a dog to pull on a leash. Describe the importance of that.
Okay. All right. So leash aggression, we'll talk about maybe in another episode, but when you tether an animal to you, you're tying them to you. So now you remove immediately their ability to fight or flee. Mm-hmm. So if I put shackles on a child's feet and start throwing rocks at them, it gives them anxiety, right? Well, I wouldn't throw rocks at a kid, except they were my kids. But but my point is, once you tether an animal to anything, and it loses its natural ability to fight its opposition or flee, which we all have. We all have the ability to fight or flight. Right. So by connecting the dog to you, tethering to it, And then if you're restraining the dog, you're sending down all this anxiety. So it's so important to relax and, of course, have a loose leash. Obviously, in our domestic world, there's no dogs tied to anything. So it's counterintuitive to a dog to be tied to anything.
Right. And I think, we see so many problems with customers coming into our daycare and boarding facilities with leash aggression, and we work hard to try and make customers understand the root of the problem. which is
Restraint.
which is restraint. And if you're walking with a loose leash and you learn the proper way not to allow a dog to pull,
Right.
you create a much better balance for the dog on the leash. So the problem with the leash in general, and if the dog is pulling, they're psychologically the leader of the pack.
Right. Not only, right. That's one element of it, but they're also not free to. So these become, again, all these behaviors are connected. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So let's say you're walking down the street with your dog on a leash, and it sees another dog or a cat, or it sees something, a car, any movement, and it pulls on the leash. When we pull back, and then those things disappear, whether it's another dog, whether it's a car. As soon as you pull back and put restraint on something, the dog thinks he's created that experience.
Right.
So they pull more and more and more. And it's funny that we have dogs here that come in very leash aggressive, and then we put them in a playroom in the right play group, and there's none of that. It doesn't exist. It exists on a leash because of the restraint factor.
Well, and don't you think too, though, that part of the problem is that the dog doesn't trust the person at the other end of the leash to be the leader. So the dog is looking up the leash and saying, this person has me tethered to them. I don't trust that they're going to protect me. So they find the need to protect themselves. And that's where leash aggression can come in.
Completely. And we know that in every aspect of our life. So I like to use the analogy of taking a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old child into Manhattan. If you're walking a child down the street in Midtown Manhattan and steam is coming out of the ground and you start pulling the kid back or picking up the kid, you're projecting fear, but you know that it's just steam from the subway, or you know what a fire engine is. So if you are relaxed, the child will look up to you and see if you're relaxed. And they get the cue. A human child gets the cue from the leader of the pack, which is the parents, presumably.
Right.
Presumably. So the child hears a noise, or look, how many times does a kid fall and then they look up at the parent to see their reaction?
Right.
And this is exactly what dogs are doing constantly. So it's the human is creating this problem. Going back to the initial point, if a dog doesn't pull on a leash when he's 4 months old, 5 months old, 6 months old, he won't pull on a leash when he's 6 years old.
Right. And there's ways that we correct a dog for pulling on the leash.
Of course. But just understand it's unnatural, being tied to something.
So we want the dog to walk on the leash as if they are not on a leash at all. And that's like that, taking that mindset away from the dog. If they don't think they're on the leash because the leash is so loose, that eliminates the leash aggression problems.
Yes. In my mind, especially the people living in suburbia, I don't even know why I have this conversation all the time. We live in an area where everybody has 2 acres of property. I see people walking their dogs on the street. If you have a secure backyard, why go through this ritual? I mean, this is a conversation for another day.
We just want to get through that.
All right, let's get through. What else you got?
The third important part to this is making sure that your dog's not pulling on the leash. And then to move on to number 4, is everything should be initiated by you, not the dog. And we've covered this a little bit thus far, but explain the importance of that psychologically to the dog.
Right. I guess I got to keep going back to the simplicity of this. The dog can't control your actions. So we have to control the dog's actions. Again, it's like a 3-year-old. They don't decide when they're doing something. The human has to. That doesn't mean they're not provided for. They play, they eat. All their needs are met by the leader of the pack, not the other way around. So a crying child jumping up and down demanding ice cream, obviously, I think the answer is not to give the child ice cream, because then the child will soon learn that that's the behavior to get the ice cream.
Right.
That's the mammalian, that's the narcissistic mammalian brain. So, yeah, you just have to be a good leader by not being consumed by your dog.
Right. And if we're talking about a dog jumping or initiating something, to ignore the dog for that behavior, and then 5, 10, 15 minutes later, when the dog is not doing anything, you can then go and initiate play. You can invite the dog on the couch so that the dog learns that everything is initiated by you.
Absolutely.
And their behaviors are not going to trigger an outcome that they that they want and expect.
And this is all very simple and primal stuff. Hopefully in episodes to come, we're going to demonstrate all this.
Yes.
So for those of you who watch this, you'll see live demonstrations of, but I'm anxious to demonstrate, as I said, the simplicity of this, that I think by a demonstration, a video demonstration, you'll see that it doesn't require going to any place special. We use actually a little nylon kennel lead to start developing these behaviors. So it's hard to articulate.
It is
in
hard to
human words.
articulate.
So it's nice to see that it's so easy, and I think that that's the biggest problem I have is taking the people, stop thinking, breathe, relax, stop staring at your dog, stop touching your dog, stop all of this stuff. It's not helping your dog. It's actually conflicting them.
Right. And that rolls into our fifth way to be a good leader of the pack, which is to speak in dog. And, what does that mean to speak in dog?
Right. So speaking in dogs don't speak human language. We know that. So stop talking to your dog because they're really cueing. Almost 90% of the things that they're reacting to is movement, whether it's movement towards the front, whether it's you getting off the couch, you heading towards the cabinet where their food is, whether you're putting your pajamas on. They know by every movement you make, they're being cued by that. So understanding that when they're in a pack, and we said this before, they're looking at the leader of the pack for cues of what to expect, what's happening. So if you start looking and explaining to them that you're going to the grocery store, or if you're asking them if they have to go potty, expecting them to answer that question is ridiculous because they're incapable of talking human language.
Right. So when we say speak in dog, we mean be more conscious of your body language and kind of what your physicality.
Physicality, but we take it for granted. As I said earlier, try to go home and not look at your dog. Try not to make eye contact for 10 minutes. Just pretend they're invisible. Make them invisible like they're ghosts, and see how hard it is for most pet owners to do that. It's almost impossible. You can do it with your husband, your spouses, your children. You trust me. You don't stare at your spouses. You don't. You function in your house. You morphically travel. If you're on a New York City subway, you don't look at the passengers next to you. So eye contact is usually important. I think that that's actually something for an entire episode, not to look, talk, and touch.
It's important.
Generally,
so just learn to communicate to the dog in the way that the dog understands.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Let's get to the question of the day. This relates to, it's actually, I guess we get a lot of questions about this when you do private training, and part of the rehabilitation or setting good boundaries, you recommend when the dog goes back into the home after doing, we do a 12-day boot camp here at corporate, but and part of that aftercare is making sure that dogs don't cross boundaries in the home. But when is it appropriate? So part of our recommendation is don't allow a dog on the couch. But people say, but 3 months from now, I want my dog to be on the couch sometimes. I want my dog to sleep in my bed. I don't want my dog to sleep in a crate all the time. What is your answer to that?
Right. Well, it's very simple, going back to what you say, whatever you initiate. So here's my experiment for you. Anybody listening, go home, don't look, talk, or touch your dog for 10 minutes. Then go into the middle of your living room or wherever, a central location, not on the couch, not in the dining room table. Get in the middle of the floor, sit on the floor. Your dog will come to you without any conversation if he's not following you around already, because he doesn't understand why you're not looking, talking, or touching. You're like a different creature to him now because you're not doing your ritual. Get on the ground, love him till your hands fall off. The next time you're watching television, just slide down, and instead of it being inviting the dog up into your world, they live down on the ground. Get a nice pillow. If I could do it, trust me, you could do it. You get on the ground, have your popcorn, and enjoy a movie with your pack animal next to you, rather than inviting them up on an artificial surface that doesn't exist in the wild. Get down on the ground. And just that height, you standing up, will be the cue for him to get lost. And you getting low will be saying, hey, Fido, I want to love and play with you.
And I think it's more engaging for the dog when you do that, other than inviting the dog to just sit up on the couch with you. Like, it's equivalent of kind of getting on the floor and playing with kids.
Exactly. So, right. Thank you. So if you have a 2-year-old, you're not, you get down on the ground and you play with them. And it's rather than have them climb up on a dining room table or chair. So yeah, and again, the simple, we have to demonstrate these. So go home, don't look, talk, or touch your dog for 10 minutes. 15 minutes, 5 minutes. Then when you can't take it anymore, I have my clients, they're like ready to kill me because they're like, when can I look at my dog? When can I touch my dog? It's unbelievable really to me that they have such, I see the anxiety in them that for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I'm not allowing them to do that. Then all of a sudden I tell them to just get low. There's no talk. It's just that body language of the person getting way down low, draws the dog in, you love him, rub his belly, kiss him, whatever it is you do. And then do that for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, stand up and make him disappear and continue that ritual.
And then he will learn to adapt to that new ritual rather than you're giving him whatever he wants throughout the entire day.
Wherever he wants it. That's the problem.
Right. Well, that's where territorial aggression comes into, which is a topic for another
day. But yeah, of course. And we invite dogs up on couches, but it's really actually, again, it's selfish of you not to get on the ground in his world. Why are you requiring him to jump up into your world?
Right. And then you're potentially putting him in a position where he's going to become territorial.
And you're going to yell at him when you have company over. So you can't wait. You do this all year or all week, and then on Sunday your in-laws are coming over and you're screaming at the dog to get off the couch. It's toxic, crazy. I think we've talked far longer than we should. This is a good episode. Yes. Another one in the can, so to speak.
Let's wrap this up. So thanks for watching The Dish on Dogs. You can find us on Facebook on The Dish on Dogs. Check us out, houndstownusa.com. We will also be available on all of the standard podcast platforms. So we'll see everybody next time.